Okay, I made my own auto executable graphics config, my own performance configuration for Team Fortress 2. And a common issue I have with this project, this side project, that I charge nothing for, is that people will be very skeptical to use it because it has a small user base. You know, it's mostly kept among myself, my friends, and roughly 4 people I've met in random pub matches who were like, "Oh, potato, my computer sucks," and I would send them a link and say, "Here you go, man. Hope it helps." That sort of thing. Now, in some instances, these people were using master config. They were using Chris's max frames. They would say, "Oh, I already have a config. And what's so great about yours?" Well, I mean, I don't think mine's particularly great. I don't think it's particularly awful. It's just a config, and with computers, everybody has a different computer. Everybody has all sorts of variables going on inside of that computer, so some configs will work better on your computer. Some configs, different configs, might work better on my computer. That being said, I made my own, and people were requesting to see more empirical data on it rather than me telling them it works because I get more frames and me telling them it works because all of my friends get more frames. You know, people want to see the science, man. They want to see the science. They can't trust word of mouth anymore. They're faithless individuals. They gotta trust in this right here. Oh yeah. Let's stretch this puppy out. The science. The Reddit brain cannot comprehend a yes or no. They gotta have the data, bro. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Because I got the data. And I will bring that up right now. Well, right now enough. If OBS would cooperate. Here we are. This is the science, alright? Now, I'm going to explain how I ran this test. I ran this test by using the master config demo benchmark available on the website. And I know in other source games you have the option of just running a benchmark map, Counter-Strike 2 for example, CSGO, whatever you want to call it. You know, that game. That game with the game and the guns in it. Yeah, that one. You know what I'm talking about. That game has a standardized map just for benchmarking. Team Fortress 2 is a little different. There's a demo you have to run. If you don't know about demo reels, sorry, your loss. Whatever. They're awesome. You can do a lot of things with them. This is the demo available. This is how you test. This is the standardized way to test for FPS, among other things, within Team Fortress 2. Generally, a performance test. Okay, so that's how you do it in Team Fortress 2. I would much rather there be a video where there's a benchmark map, very similar to Counter-Strike, where I just kind of, the camera moves throughout all this chaos, and it takes a toll on the system, and you compare the before and after FPS along with the frame timings. I don't have that luxury because it's Team Fortress 2. Game gets no love, man. It's no love. So, just wanted to throw that out there. This is not Counter-Strike. We really don't have that option. The only maps that did exist strictly for benchmarking were kind of lost to time. I was on teamfortress.tv, which is a popular forum for Team Fortress 2 that is not Reddit, and there are a lot of people on there who chase frames. That they call it the config community. They want to get the most amount of frames possible, no matter what, and they're willing to make their game look like it was a Nintendo 64 prototype to get there, and I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. All of that being said, my test, I ran the game bone stock, no auto executable, my own personal one that I made. It will be in the description. No mods, no launch options, nothing. I just gutted it all out, launched the game, ran the benchmark, Now, when you run the benchmark, I am aware of this. I wanted to state that I did do this. I waited a while for what master config would, or the master config team would consider to be systemic variability. Basically, when the game first starts up and you run this test a few times, the scores are going to be really low. It takes a while for the engine to heat up, all right? That source engine, it's old. You know, it's old. It's got a cracked block. It's leaking coolant, spraying oil everywhere. It's not in the best shape. You got to give it time, all right? And I did. How you get the best scores with the benchmark is you punch it in, run the demo reel a couple times. It'll run for a few times. The first few scores are going to be crap, but it will slowly go upward in a curve and then eventually taper off on the end. So what I did is I ran the command an excessive number of times for both the control and test group, and I did wait for the source engine to warm up before I collected these results. I collected the final 3 results after it kind of plateaued for both the control and test group, and then I crunched the numbers, got a baseline average for both tests, and then I got the results down here, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this was the control group. These were the test results. Now these two, as far as I'm aware, are not the most important variables when it comes to your performance of the auto executable you're running. To my understanding, and I could very well be wrong here, these are frames. These are, how do I say this? I guess just information from the demo reel. Not saying it's irrelevant, I'm just saying I am not the most certain as to what the number of frames generated and the time it was generated have to do on raw performance. That might be for the turbo nerds. I'm just a nerd. I'll leave that to them. Hopefully somebody in the comments will see this and provide me an explanation. I'd love to learn. But the meaningful test results I got out of this, so comparing the game with the benchmark reel, bone stock, to the test, which had the executable, the launch options that I made. I didn't make the launch options, of course. That was done by Valve, but the autoexec, I made that myself. Again, link in the description. And these were the results. I did the same thing. Same thing. Punched it in, waited for that source engine to warm up, waited for the operating system to allocate more resources, waited for the test results to stabilize and kind of taper out at a consistent baseline. Then I collected the last 3 test results from that stable baseline. I compared the two, and then I took an average of the two and compared that, and these are the main results here. So in conclusion, my config gave 60 more frames per second on the benchmark. It gave 1.13 milliseconds per frame lower render latency, and it provided a more stable amount of frames per second. So that's that. I mean, the proof's in the pudding here. I don't know how else to prove this to people. Again, I really wish there was a benchmark map similar to Counter-Strike that would be a little more concrete and not as abstract for people, but this is the test. This is how it's done in Team Fortress. And yeah, these are the results. Now, could this be better? Absolutely, probably could be better. But that's what the mods are for. I think during the whatever update it was, Valve finally allowed us to have VPK files again. If I was chasing the maximum amount of frames, I would redo these tests again and test again with mods that the community made, such as Clean Fortress. I think it's called Clean Fortress. It might be called Clean TF2. And then there's another mod that it changes the explosions to be, instead of cloudy and particulate and throwing smoke everywhere from something like a soldier's rocket. It's just like a transparent or translucent icon on the ground that's like a sphere, I guess you could say. It's kind of difficult to explain that. But there are plenty of mods out there to increase performance, try to reduce the poly count of models, trying to reduce the amount of textures on screen. That works. If you think of it, somebody probably made it. Now, the reason I'm not including that in this test is because I wanted to test how well my config... Actually, let me backpedal a bit here. I wanted to test and prove that my config does indeed work. You know, I'm not some grifter putting malware on your computer. The source code is available on GitHub. It's all open source. You can read it. You can copy, paste it, use it, stitch it into your own config, maybe learn something about it, maybe teach me something about mine that yours has, somebody else's config has that mine doesn't. But in my experience, my config works really well for me. It works really well for all my friends. It works really well for those in need I've found in random matches who are struggling with their FPS. In some cases, my config works better than master config. In other cases, you know, Kamanglia's config will work better than mine. Everybody's computer is a little different. There's so many variables involved on everybody's machine that it would be very difficult to create a one-size-fits-all config for every type of machine. You know, if you have older hardware, you need to enable different DX levels, which is kind of depreciated at this point, but that's an example of one thing you would need to enable on older hardware. You would have to change up a few variables. I mean, everything down to your drivers. The works, right? The works. There is no magic bean. There is no one size, one config fixes all of your woes. Just try them out. Hopefully mine, the one I made throughout the years off and on, helps you. And if it doesn't, hopefully Kamanglia's, Rhapsody, Chris's, Master Config, just to name a few, hopefully those help you out. I just want there to be less FPS struggles in the game so more people have an enjoyable time. I hope the video made at least some amount of sense. I know I'm not Shonik, the legend, the man, the myth, the legend, who's able to break this all down in a very clean, concise, and articulate manner. This is my first technical video about Team Fortress 2. Makes sense to me. Hope it makes sense to all of y'all. Yeah, I think that's more or less the end of the video. I'm gonna pause it right here and see if there's anything I could think of before wrapping it up. I guess I would like to add to all of my 5 Gorillion subscribers that if you did find this interesting, comment what made it interesting and what you would like to see in the future. I could have some of my friends get on and explain their stories with my config. I have a few in particular that I could probably bring on to interview. And again, this isn't trying to be about myself, it's just trying to talk about the magic of how automatically executing all of these console commands to increase FPS kind of brings people together, and it helps a lot of people out who have lower end machines. When I first started playing, I was one of those people. So yeah.